Hello friends, my name is Raghavendra Agarwal. I am the telecom core domain subject matter expert. Today we'll discuss on service based architecture, which is the core principle of 5G core network. Let's begin. The service based architecture, there is a concept of producer and consumer, right? So some of the network function will behave as producer. Producer is actually the network function which is producing the services, which is announcing the services, or you can say which is originating the services, right? Let's say the UDM is having the subscription information, right? So UDM is announcing the subscriber information, the UE subscription information to other network function, right? Now UDM is producing the services, which is one network function. Now another concept is network function consumer, which for example is AMF, because AMF want the subscription information. AMF is looking for user subscription information to process the request, right? So in this case, the AMF will be the user subscription consumer. So the services being produced by the UDM will be consumed by the AMF, right? So one of the network function is behaving as producer, one of the other network function is behaving as a consumer, right? But there is no point-to-point connection, which means AMF cannot statically select the UDM. AMF doesn't have any configuration saying that for subscription service which is being announced by UDM, right? There is a static mapping of the subscription service with the IP address of UDM. There is no configuration like that, right? Now, to make this complete flow works, so that AMF understand what is the IP address of the UDM on which the request will be sent, and the AMF will get the response or the subscription information, right? To make this complete flow works, first step, network function producer, right, has to talk to network repository function, which in 5G known as NRF, network repository function, right? So UDM, as soon as the network function producer is ready with the service and ready to announce the service for the consumer, it sends the service registration request to the NRF, to the repository function, which means the producer informing to the NRF saying that as a producer I am ready to announce the service, right? So the producer has to send the service registration request to the NRF, and in the registration request it will send the profile of the network function, right? Profile means it will send the network function instance ID, network function type means UDM, AMF, whatever the producer is, right? So it sends the network function type. Then it also sends the network function information, means for which SUPI range, for which Gypsy range or the PLMN range this particular service will be consumed. What is the network function service name, right? So for example, the UDM is announcing the subscription service, the service name is NUDM SDM, right? So it will send the service name also to the NRF, the 5G UDM service name for which it is announcing the subscription service. So it will send the service name also. It will also send the selection mechanism on which basis the UDM will be selected, right? For example, the capacity, the weight, the load, the priority, the locality, right? So these are the different selection mechanism which will be announced at the same at the time of the service registration by the producer, right? What is the FQDN and the IP address of the producer? So all these information, which is actually the network function profile, will be announced by the producer at the time of the service registration, and it will be stored into the network repository function, right? And once this communication of service registration flow get completed, then in NRF the network function status will be registered. Means the NRF has the information of producer and the producer status is registered. Means producer is live and announcing the service. Producer is ready to handle the request being sent by consumer, right? Now as a next step, because consumer want to access that service which is being produced by the producer, but there is no point-to-point connection, there is no configuration in the consumer saying that this is the IP address, go and consume, right? Now for network function to understand or to know that what is the IP address or the FQDN of the producer for that particular service, the NF consumer, network function consumer, has to send the network function authorization and discovery request. Network function authorization means the NRF will first authorize the consumer whether the consumer is authorized to access the service or not, right? And then based on the network function discovery criteria, which includes the target NF type, what is the network function that consumer want to access as a target NF as a producer, what is the service the consumer want to access, what is the service name, what is the network slicing information, the DNN information, the PLMN, locality, right? So these are the different discovery criteria will be sent by consumer to the NRF. Based on these inputs as a discovery criteria inputs, the NRF will check that what is the authorized producer for that service, right? Based on that, the NRF will respond back with the IP address of the producer, right? Now the consumer has the IP address of the producer who is announcing the services which consumer want to access, which in this case may be the user subscription information, right? The next step is the consumer will send the network function service request. Let's say the get request, which is get NUDM SDM, right? In this particular example, the AMF will send the get request to UDM and the service request name will be NUDM SDM, get NUDM SDM. So by this request, the UDM will come to know that the AMF want the subscription information of that particular subscriber, and in the response UDM will respond back with the AM data, access management data, right? Mobility information, slicing information, AMBR, right? Subscription information, all these information will be sent by UDM to AMF in the response, right? So this is the way the complete service architecture will be constructed and followed. Now let's take one more step ahead. Now the subscription information is being sent to the consumer, and now there is a change in running configuration. There is change in running profile of the subscriber, right? Now the UDM also need to communicate to the AMF saying that the profile is being updated or the profile is being changed. Maybe some barring is enabled, some barring is removed, right? So some change in the profile, right? So for that there is a communication called subscription and notification. In the subscription, the consumer has to subscribe the NUDM SDM service in this case, which means it is informing to the UDM as a producer of the service, saying that whenever there is a change in the subscription data, you please respond back to me, right? So the UDM will notify to the consumer, the producer will notify to the consumer if there is any change in the subscription information, if there is any change in the profile by notification, right? So this is the way the producer inform to consumer if there is any change in the profile of the subscriber in this particular case, right? So this construct altogether will be applicable for all the network function. Here I have taken UDM and AMF as an example, right? But in 5G core network, SMF is also producing the services, or NEF is also producing the services, PCF is also producing the services, AMF is also producing the services, right? So in this case we have taken AMF as a consumer, but some of the services is also being produced by the AMF, which is being consumed by UDM, right? So one network function can behave as consumer also and producer also, right? So this is the construct of the service based architecture, which will be applicable for all the network function of 5G core, right? Whether it is service registration, service discovery, service notification, subscription, or request and response. So all these construct will remain same for all the network function. Only the relevant service name will get changed, their criteria will get changed, their maybe selection mechanism get changed, right? But the overall construct will remain same, right? That's it for this today. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much.